Good evening. Passengers on Southern Rail have faced another day of frustration despite promises a full timetable would run from today. Around 100 services were cancelled or delayed despite the train drivers' union ASLEF calling off their strike as talks continue over the future role of guards. Here's our transport correspondent, Mike Pearce.
The promise was a normal service, but there were still cancellations, about 5% this morning. The improvement is because the drivers' union ASLEF has called off its strikes to allow for peace talks.
Packed to the rafters, just awful.
Yes, the service is normal, very good. I arrived at work like 15 minutes earlier than usual.
Same old, delayed service.
They said it'd be back to normal today. Was it normal?
No, it wasn't normal.
The RMT say the company has broken a promise not to run trains without a second member of staff. This disabled passenger says it's leaving people stranded.
Often the staff are not aware that I'm on the train, and I've been left on the train with no one to assist me to get off, causing huge anxiety and distress, and this is a common occurrence.
Southern say they've had to run a few services without a second person because of the industrial action. Meanwhile, a passenger survey from the official watchdog today names Southern, not surprisingly, as the worst in the country.
The government needs to obviously be aware that passengers at the moment are feeling very frustrated, particularly commuters, and they need to work with operators and Network Rail to ensure that the punctual, reliable railway that we as passengers deserve is being delivered.
Meanwhile, MPs have been debating if High Court judges should in future approve transport strikes and limit any action to allow half of services to run.
We in Parliament should not stand by and allow strike action to cause people to lose their own jobs.
This bill is disproportionate, it's unnecessary, and it's an attack on a fundamental British liberty, the right to withdraw labour in a legal trade dispute with an employer.
Well, Southern say today it did have enough drivers. The problem was the people who planned where they should be got it a bit wrong. Tonight, here at Three Bridges, around half the services are running late, but most trains are running. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Three Bridges.
It's being reported tonight a father of four, originally from Southampton, has been shot dead in Thailand. Tony Kenway was sat in his Porsche outside a sports club in the resort of Pattaya. The Foreign Office has confirmed it's in contact with local police. Residents had to be evacuated from flats in Southampton after a fire. A ground floor bedsit on Upper Shaftesbury Avenue was badly damaged in the blaze. It's believed items caught fire near an electric heater. The family of an 83-year-old man who died when he was hit by a train on an unmanned level crossing are calling for safety improvements to prevent further deaths. Derek Thomas, who was on a mobility scooter, was killed at Bentley near Alton last October. An inquest into his death heard the weather conditions may have made it difficult for Mr. Thomas to see or hear the train. The Civil Aviation Authority today agreed to accept all the safety recommendations made after the Shoreham Airshow disaster. 11 men died when a Hawker Hunter jet crashed on the A27 in August 2015. Today's report directs airshow organisers to follow new, stricter safety measures. Earlier, I asked our reporter Andy Dickinson what we had learnt.
Well, in the background to this report, there is obviously the police investigation into the air crash, investigations by the Air Accident Investigations Branch and the inquest. But today's report by the Civil Aviation Authority directly refers to recommendations already made by the AAIB, specifically procedures on maintenance for ex-military jets like the Hawker Hunter at the centre of the Shoreham disaster and the distances between air shows and the crowds that watch them. We asked George Bacon from the British Air Display Association what he thought.
Well, I think generally we're all in harmony on this one, simply because whilst this may be seen as perhaps work around the edges of the whole activity, it is all good stuff which will reinforce the safety parameters pertaining to the entire activity.
Now, the CAA is telling us that it is accepting all the safety recommendations made so far. 9 of the 21 up until this point had been rejected. However, the small print of the report itself is less clear, with many recommendations like the one specifying boundaries left open and relying on further reviews.
So will pilots now have to tell air shows about their routes and manoeuvres in advance?
Yes, it seems that now has been agreed, and that has also been one area that we believe the police have been looking into in their investigations into the crash. Did the Shoreham organisers know which stunts and how low the pilot, Andy Hill, would fly?
And just briefly, Andy, where are we with those investigations?
Andrew, 11 men died in that air crash in August 2015 and their families are still awaiting answers. I spoke to the police this morning and all they would tell me was their investigations are still ongoing. The inquest is not now expected until late this year. A final report by the AAIB could be released in the spring. Those that run air shows like Farnborough and Bournemouth will also be waiting to hear what changes they will have to make.
Andy Dickinson reporting there. A £500 million project to link the national grids of the UK and France has been approved by Fareham Borough Council. More than 100 miles of undersea cables will be laid from Normandy to Hillhead Beach and a power station would be built at Daedalus Airfield. The national grid says the project will mean lower energy prices for customers. A unique collection of autographs has fetched £36,000 at auction. From the great train robbers to Charles Dickens and Neil Armstrong, the collection of 1,000 signatures belonged to a stage magician called John Evans from Worthing. It's not for the faint-hearted and shouldn't be tried without training. Parkour, or free running, where people run and jump through urban areas, has grown in popularity. There are clubs in Basingstoke, Horsham and Brighton and has now been named an official sport. Here's Kate Prout.
For 10 years, Brad Wenders has been banging the drum for parkour. It's preparing to take a great leap forward now that it's been recognised as an official sport.
It gives us credibility, people can start to understand what we do and understand that it's a legitimate activity and it's not just a bunch of oiks jumping around. It's the same as any sporting pursuit, it's the same as any healthy pursuit, the same as any other exercise they can get involved in. It also gives us the backing of things like Sport England. It just puts us on the same level pegging as every other sport. So we're as accepted as football, as rugby, golf, tennis, as any of them, and we've just got to jump through the same hoops as them, but at least we're on the same level as them.
Parkour, or free running, was developed in France in the 1980s. It involves running, climbing, swinging, vaulting, jumping and rolling. I don't know about you, but I watch free runners with my heart in my mouth, convinced they're going to hurt themselves. But of course the first rule of parkour is how to land safely, how to jump safely, because the last thing this sport needs is injuries. Brad has 800 free runners on his books.
I guess the main thing I get out of it is it's a chance to be creative. And it's kind of trying to push your limits, like physically, but also when you train there's also a mental barrier. So every time you're training there's always that obstacle to get over, like mental and physical.
You develop something that they call parkourize, where you look at something rather than thinking, oh, that's a wall, you're like, oh, there's a jump there, or oh, I can do that. And it completely changes, like almost in like the Matrix, for example, it changes everything.
And it might change the image of parkour in many people's eyes too, and turn this into a sport making great strides in the world.
Kate Prout reporting there. On to football, and Brighton have gone back to the top of the Championship. They beat Cardiff this evening thanks to a Toma Hemed goal 15 minutes from time. OK, let's take a look at the weather now with Simon Parkin.
From sleet to the slopes, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening, and as you've probably already spotted, it's another cold and murky night tonight. Lots of mist and fog, although it does look very pretty in pictures, but we've also got freezing conditions as well, so watch out for slippery roads first thing tomorrow morning if they're untreated, as well as that dense fog. For Thursday, a better day in that we're going to start to pick up the much drier air from the near continent. That's going to give us more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of mist and murk. The downside is it's going to be much colder. Certainly with the wind chill, it's actually going to feel like temperatures are of around 1 or 2 degrees. So brace yourself for things to not get any warmer as the week goes on. Certainly tonight we're down into the sub-zero again, and we've got that risk of ice, that risk of mist and fog. So a couple of weather warnings to take into tomorrow morning's rush hour. Give yourself a bit of extra time. Visibility will be poor. Also, as I say, things could be a bit slippery as well. But an improving story, because we're going to pick up a breeze that will just help to lift that mist into low cloud as we head through the morning. By the afternoon, you might, if you're lucky, see an odd bright spell. Stays generally cloudy, and it stays quite cold as well.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
That's it for now. We're back during Good Morning Britain from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. But from the late team here, good night.